Happy Friday. It is May 8th, and today I'll be reading Glory Be chapter 15. But that will just be the read aloud at the very end of our PowerPoint. So make sure not only you are listening to the video for the lesson, but you're also listening to the read aloud because you never know when I'll be posting a quiz. Today's objective, students will be able to compare and contrast stories in the same genre by identifying similarities and differences. And your DOL will be filling out a Venn diagram online. It won't be two overlapping circles because I couldn't create that type of document, but instead you'll just be filling in rectangles instead of the circles. So it's the same exact thing where you write the differences and then the similarities between two things. Comparing and contrasting stories in the same genre. Learning target. Comparing, contrasting, and thinking about how stories in the same genre approach similar themes and topics will deepen your understanding of each story. Stories are grouped by genre, such as mystery, adventure, or science fiction. Stories in the same genre usually follow similar patterns and forms. They often have similar themes and topics too. The theme is the message of a story, such as, friends are always there for you. The topic is the subject of the story, such as heroes or time travel. Comparing and contrasting stories in the same genre can help you see their themes and topics more clearly. Read the stories below. Compare and contrast their themes and topics. Goodbye, DXL 597. Unfortunately, we read this in class, so you might remember. At the top, I see a mother and daughter. It looks like they're having a conversation. And then I see a daughter, looks like she's playing basketball with what looks like a robot. So let's read. Goodbye, DXL 597. Mom, where's DXL 597? I need that pile of bolts to help me with my homework. Narbla, you're always complaining about DXL 597, so I traded it in for a DXL 600. It knows 900 languages and has a faster processor. Will the new robot shoot hoops or go skyboarding with me, just like DXL 597 did? I'm afraid none of the new ones do that. They're for education only. Okay, so that story was mostly about a girl who feels as though she's a little disappointed that she got a brand new robot. She looks like she enjoyed shooting hoops and going skyboarding with her robot, but her new one obviously doesn't do that. So let's now read the last imperfection. EF 2020 stood between two other Zaxxons in a line that stretched to the horizon on both sides. Their screens faced the sky, watching the last ship leave Earth. The humans had created the Zaxxons, but the Zaxxons had driven the humans out. EF 2020 looked down the line of robots to his right, perfect and straight. There were no more imperfections on Earth, he thought. There would be no mistakes or accidents. Then he had another thought. There would be no more music or laughter either. EF 2020 moved ahead of the Zaxxons beside him by an inch. It was a start. So it seems as though these Zaxxons took over Earth and moved the humans out, and they thought that this was a really good idea. But at the end of the story, you realize EF 2020 is moving a little ahead of a Zaxxon to make an imperfection. So it seems as though they're going to miss the mistakes that humans make. Now I'm going to take the information from both stories and place it into a Venn diagram to compare and contrast the similarities and differences. Consider what you've learned so far about comparing and contrasting stories in the same genre. What happens in each story? Do they share topics or themes? What do you know about this genre that might help? Use the Venn diagram below to organize your thinking about the stories. So first, let's focus on Goodbye DXL 597. Now is a story about the girl who got a brand new robot. What happens? Narbla gets a new robot because she has been asking for one. However, the new robot doesn't do all the fun things the old robot did. Now let's look at the last imperfection, the story on the right. What happens? The robots have driven the humans away from Earth, but EF 2020 will miss their music and laughter. He will try to be different from the other robots. So now we have to ask ourselves, how are they the same? How are they alike? Well, their genre, they're both science fiction stories. They're both about robots. And the theme is to be careful what you wish for, as you might just get it. It seems as though they wanted these new robots, they didn't want humans, and they both regretted their decisions and what happened to them. So now for your independent work, you're going to read The Fox and the Crow and The Grasshopper and the Ant. And then you're going to fill out the Venn diagram with similarities and differences between these two stories, just how I did here. So if you forget what to do, you can always pause this slide right here to look how I filled out this Venn diagram. And now I'll be reading chapter 15 of Glory Be. I won't be practicing any skills, I'm just simply doing a read aloud. Chapter 15, Hot, Squished, Itching. We were riding fast. The radio blasted that new Elvis song Jesslyn had played 1,000,000 times on her record player, something about suspicion. I kept quiet and rested my sweaty forehead against the picnic cooler. I heard Robbie say, "Glad you thought of getting something cold to drink for the ride. I brought my camera to take your picture in front of the house." But I kept still, barely breathing. "I saw you practicing football," Jesslyn said after a while. "Everybody's saying you were the star back when you moved from. Why'd you leave?" "It's complicated," he said, "and private. Promise you won't tell?" I got a worried feeling in the pit of my stomach, like I'd eaten something rotten. Then somebody must have clicked the radio off because all I heard was the sound of wind whooshing through the windows and them shaking the ice in their coats. I managed to hear Jesslyn say, "I'm good at secrets. Preacher's kids hear a lot of stuff. Daddy has taught us not to gossip." Yeah, well, he might have taught Jesslyn, but I still had to work to do on that lesson. At first, Robbie didn't answer. I listened hard into the whooshing wind and rattly coke ice. Then Robbie's words tumbled out loud enough for me to hear. "I promised my aunt I wouldn't tell this. She doesn't want everybody sticking their noses in our family's business." Robbie got quiet again. Finally, he said, "If I hadn't come to live in Hanging Moss," Robbie struggled with his voice, then managed, "I might be in jail." Jail? Jesslyn and me were riding in a car to Kingdom Come with a jailbird? I put my hand over my mouth to keep it from yelping. Emma would have had our heads and our tails on a platter. For the first time ever, Jesslyn was speechless. She was probably thinking about Emma's wooden spoon coming in for a smack to the back of her "It's a style" skirt. Quietly, Robbie said, "I got in trouble back in North Carolina. It was in the newspapers." "What kind of trouble?" Jesslyn asked carefully. "There was this dime store with a place to eat inside, just stools and a counter. Good hot dogs and ice cream. I saw a boy there, a colored friend named Henry. His daddy worked on my granddaddy's farm. Sometimes we'd throw the ball around, act like we were scoring. Henry was always nice to me. Our schools were getting ready to join up next year. Our town wasn't really big enough to have a school for white students and a school for Negro ones. We would have ended up on the same football team." I kept holding my breath. Henry was sitting there waiting to order something. One of his friends was reading a book. They were talking quietly, not doing anything bad. Except in our town, colored people aren't supposed to eat where white people eat. I was all ears now. Robbie could have been describing Hanging Moss. Same thing for us. Colored people and white people are kept separate at pools, schools, restaurants, even the town library. "What did you do?" Jesslyn asked. The waitress yelled at him to leave, so I found a stool next to Henry. I sat down to order. I didn't like the waitress hollering at Henry and his friends to get up, so I told her so. The police came, pulled us out to the street. Of course, somebody called the newspaper. Well, I'll be. If Jesslyn or me did that at the 5 and dime lunch counter downtown, Mrs. Simpson and her newspaper people would be there faster than you could say hot dog with mustard. I can't imagine what Daddy would do if my picture ended up on the front page of the Hanging Moss Tribune." "I bet that was scary," Jesslyn said. "I'm not sorry I did it. It was scary, though. The police hauled us off to jail. I stayed there till my stepdaddy came that evening. I'd never done anything bad before, so they let me go with a warning. After that, Mama sent me here to my aunt's. Said she needed some time away from me. claimed she couldn't hold her head up around town. Now my heart was beating faster than fast. I wondered if Robbie was going to the speed limit. My insides were zooming. Jocelyn said, "Maybe your mama will change her mind and let you come home." "Yeah, well, I like it here now," Robbie said. "I'm going to stay, especially if I make the football team." "You'll make the team," Jocelyn said. "You're good." The ice rattling had stopped and the wind had died down some. I could practically hear Jocelyn batting her eyes. "Please don't tell anybody what happened in North Carolina. Word gets out I'm a troublemaker, my aunt might send me back. I don't want the team to know either." I shut my eyes tight, clinched my fists together, and willed myself not to push that scratchy blanket back, sit up, and say that Jocelyn wouldn't tell a single soul, because she's good at keeping secrets and good at telling lies. I was bad at keeping secrets and real bad at lying, especially to Emma. The car radio came back on and all I could hear was Elvis singing. The picnic cooler bounced next to me while I thought about having a Dr. Pepper with Jocelyn and Robbie soon, me pretending like I hadn't heard that bad thing about Robbie and his friend Henry. The station wagon slowed, then stopped. We were parked someplace. Jocelyn reached over to the backseat of for the camera about the time Robbie opened the way back door for the cooler. There was no more hiding. Both of them saw me at once. Jocelyn looked like she'd seen a ghost. "Glory, what are you doing? How'd you get back there?" She stormed out, slammed her car door, and stood next to Robbie. She reached over and grabbed my wrist, squeezed it so hard she could have given me a rope burn. I twisted away and shut my mouth up tight. My sister was mad as a hornet. "Have you been spying on us?" "I wanted to see where y'all were going. That's all." I glared at my sister. "I double dog dare you to fuss at me. You're not supposed to be here any more than I am. Isn't shopping in Memphis with Mary Louise fun?" When I looked over at Robbie, he had his jaw clenched tight. "Stay in the station wagon," Jocelyn hissed, "and stay quiet." I was all squished up next to the drink cooler. "You're not the boss of me." There was a little house right next to where we were parked. Where are we? Where are we? What's that broken down shack over there?" "You'll never know," Jocelyn said. "You aren't budging out of the car." Robbie must have taken some pity on me. "Let her out. It's hot back there." "She can burn up for all I care. She's not coming with us." Jocelyn's voice was full of meanness. "And you'd better not tell. I mean it, Glory." Robbie grabbed the cooler and followed Jocelyn up the cracked sidewalk. She leaned over, pulled up a handful of grass from beside a front step of that little house by the road, and stuffed the grass in her back pocket. I sat in the station wagon, hot, squished, itching to get out. "I'm coming whether you like it or not," I hollered out. Even if it was just some falling down house on a street in the middle of nowhere, I wanted to see what they were doing. When I stepped on the porch steps, it felt like the whole house would cave in. Where are we? Not far from Hanging Moss, if you knew anything at all. This is Tupelo. Elvis lived here when he was a little boy. Jocelyn hugged herself like this was as good as meeting Elvis himself. I mean, this place was downright pitiful, and Jocelyn was acting like it was a palace. I looked around. If this was Elvis's house, you'd think it'd be a little fancier. Nothing but dead bushes and a cracked window. "What'd you expect, big iron gates? You don't know about anything, Glory." Robbie pushed back his black hair that was combed like Elvis's in the picture Jocelyn kept taped to the mirror in our room. "Elvis wasn't rich when he lived here. Not that many people know about this house," Robbie said. He spit on his shirt tail, wiped circles and dust off a front window pane. "Hey, you gotta see this." Jocelyn peered through the dirty window. "I dare you to get me some of that wallpaper." She batted her eyes like Robbie was a real Elvis passing out autographs. "I'm going around back to break in." He jumped off the low porch and disappeared. Jocelyn pulled me down to the front steps. "Don't move," she said. She followed Robbie around the corner of the house. I rubbed my hand across the splinters on the steps, picturing Elvis being a little boy crawling around on this very porch. Not a breath of air moved, and the sun was so hot I got to wondering what in tarnation Jocelyn and Robbie were doing behind the house. Nancy Drew wouldn't just wait here. She'd be looking for clues. Where were they? I spotted an open window. I peeked in just in time to see Robbie peel off a piece of wallpaper and hand it to Jocelyn like it was a diamond ring. I could hear them talking plain as day. "If we hold the camera back, both of us can be in the picture." Then I saw a flash bulb pop light and heard Jocelyn giggling. I waded in the dirt and dried up grass and thought about all those nights last summer when we stayed up late talking about how yucky boys were. Now Jesslyn had disappeared with Robbie into the cool shadows of Elvis's living room, and I didn't hear talking anymore. Pretty soon they climbed back out the open window, acting all moony-eyed. That's when Jesslyn saw me sitting there. I told you to wait on the front porch. She looked right into my eyes. She was squinting hard. I want to see inside too, I told her. You never used to mind if I went places with you. I mind now. The heck with Jesslyn. I climbed right through the window of Elvis's house. Phew! It smelled like the inside of Frankie's hamster cage. I got out fast and hurried around to the front porch. Stinks to high heaven in there. Where's the picnic? I asked. Robbie handed me a drink and a cookie. I dangled my legs off the porch in the sweltering heat while they giggled and whispered. This porch sitting was getting boring. It'll be getting dark soon, I said. Emma might notice we're gone. We packed up Robbie's station wagon. Before we left, I reached down and stole me some of Elvis's grass, too. Then I slipped in the back seat, right behind Jesslyn. This is pretty. Thank you. Jesslyn curled her fingers around the piece of green-flowered wallpaper. She put her head back on the seat and looked at Robbie. I had fun today, she said. I squeezed my knees up close to my face and smiled, thinking about Elvis and that ugly wallpaper. I stopped smiling when I thought about Robbie and what he said about jail. We need to hurry. It's getting dark, I said. Right about now, all I wanted was to get home to Emma, safe and sound. Okay, so hopefully in chapter 16, we'll be able to see if Emma reacts to both Jesslyn and Glory being gone for a long time. Have a great Friday and a great weekend.